This is an example of what we're going to make with the magic pillowcase today. This is a standard size pillowcase. I just made this about 10 minutes ago. So this is the body, this is the strip, and then this is the cup. And as you can see, it's nice and roomy for those big overstuffed pillows also. These have French seams. So when you flip it open, you see you do not have any raw edges at all. Hello YouTube friends, I'm back today with another tutorial. Today we're going to make magic pillowcases. These are so easy and they're such a good gift item. We're just birthday items, or they don't have to be Christmas themed. However, I'm making this for a craft fair coming up, and so I'm making these Christmas themed. However, you can make them any theme you want, especially for children. They are so cute and so easy to make. So I'm going to start walking you through this. If you're interested, stick around and don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button. And if you want to see other products I make, please go to my website. It's hugsandstitchesbyval.com. So there's 3 pieces to a magic pillowcase. There's the body of the pillow, there's the strip, and then there's a cuff. So these are my choices for this pillowcase. So first of all, I'm going to cut the easy ones. I'll save the body for later. This is just the strip that separates the body from the cuff. You can make your body and your cuff the same, but this is an opportunity to show some personality, so I'm going to make mine separate. So this strip is just 2.5 inches width of fabric. I'm going to square up this edge because I just got this at the fabric store, and as you know, they're not always perfect on the top. So let me just square up the edge. And then these strips are 2.5 inches. I'm going to make 2 of these pillowcases so that they can match. So I'll be making 2 of everything. There's one 2.5 strip. Here's a second one. Let me get this fabric out of the way. This is the cuff, and this is directional, so I want to make sure that I'm mindful of which direction I want this to be. I'm not interested in that right now. Right now I'm just going to cut it. But these need to be 11 inches width of fabric. So I have used this one recently, so you can see that this is a good straight edge. So I'm just going to push this up a little bit and cut 11 inches for my cuff. My second one is barely going to give me 11 inches out of that. And then lastly, I'm going to do the body. The body is going to be, these are standard pillowcases. I did not say that in the beginning. I will put measurements up there for king size and for standard. You can find them in the description box, but I'll also just put a text across. It's pretty simple. There's really not many materials involved in this. I'm going to straighten my edge out up here. And then I'm going to do 27 inches. I do not have, my cutting board goes to 24 inches, and I can turn it sideways and do that if I wanted to, but I have a bunch of fabric over here. So I'm going to cheat, and I'm just going to fold this 13.5 inches. That way I know that it'll be 27 inches total. So this is 13.5 inches right here. There's one. We have all of our fabric pieces now. So here are our 2 pillowcases. Here are all the supplies that I need. My strips, my cuffs, and the body. I'm going to take these strips over to the iron, and I'm just going to iron them in half like you would do binding, and I'll be right back in a second. Okay, so the first thing you're going to do is take your cuff and you're going to lay it out, and you're going to take your binding with the raw edges to the raw edges of your cuff, and you're going to pin it. You need to be precise as we're going through and pinning these, because you definitely don't want to have a wonky line as you go through, and we're going to end up with numerous pieces of fabric together. You could use Wonder clips. The only reason I'm using pins is because there's so many pieces of fabric that we're going to be using that I don't know if the Wonder clips will be able to keep it straight enough. Once you get this pinned on, you take the body, flip it upside down like this, and you pin this in place with the other ones. Try to get all of your edges really lined up. So I'm just going to pull my original pin out. Add it. They may not all line up, as you know. So you're going to take your fabric, and this is called like burrito method. So you're going to start rolling this up pretty small, and then when you get down to about right here, then you're going to take the other edge of your cuff, you're going to bring it around, and you're going to add this to all of those fabrics. So you can see why I pinned it now, because at this point in time you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 layers of fabric. Once you get this pinned, you're going to take it over to the sewing machine and sew it along this line. And you can see all these layers of fabric here. So quite a number of them. Okay, so now I'm at the sewing machine, and I just changed this to my 1/4 inch foot just to make it easier. So I am going to sew this along the edge. Make sure I start out really straight there. I'm going to back stitch at the beginning and at the end. So now we have this nice long burrito, and we're going to turn it inside out. So we're just going to reach in and start grabbing the fabric and pulling it inside out. And you're going to see that now you have this great setup with the cuff and the strip and your body. Now that we've sewn this, I'm going to take this over to my iron. I'm going to give it a really nice press here so that I can keep these lines very nice. Make sure your back and your front are all pressed nicely. And I'll be back in just a minute. Okay, so I've ironed it now, and you can see this nice crisp line, front and back. And so now we're going to square up these edges, because these are the different widths of the fabric. It's perfectly normal. So what I want to do is turn these to each other, and I want to match up these very well. I want to match up the lines of the strip, and then I'm going to trim it. So I can do this with Wonder clips. I want to do this with the least waste as possible. So I'm more concerned about lining up these edges over here than I am the edges over there, which I feel pretty comfortable with what we've got going on here. You can see, this is where we cut off the selvage, and this is where we cut off the unevenness over here. I'm going to line this cuff up on the table. Let me move this again so that it's doubled up. So my ruler isn't long enough to do that. There's a lot of fabric. I'm like hacking through it here. That is a nice straight line right here. And when we peel this back and we look at this, we've got these lined up perfectly. So I am going to flip this around to the right side, and then I'm going to line everything up. I know it sounds a little crazy to do the right side, but that's the French seam. Trust me, it's going to work just beautifully in the end. So I'm going to line these up first, and then I'm going to clip all the way around. I'm not worried about that little bit of selvage right there, because that's going to be in the seam allowance. We're going to sew this at a 3/8 seam allowance. Well, no, this one we're going to sew at a 1/4 seam allowance, and then when we flip it around, we're going to sew it at a 3/8. to cover up the original quarter. So you should see that all of your cutting is just lining up beautifully at this point. I'm going to go to the sewing machine. I'm going to start at the cuff. I'm going to back stitch, sew all the way down, and I'm going to leave my needle in down here, pivot, and go ahead and sew a 1/4 inch all the way to the end and back stitch again. Now that that is done, we will just go over and clip this one corner just to reduce bulk. We're going to flip it wrong side out. It's starting to look a lot like a pillowcase. I'm going to grab my little clover point turner, and I'm just going to poke my little corners out here. I'm going to take this over to the iron, and I'm going to make sure that I have all of my seams really nice and crisp. That's an important part of this right now, is we're going to sew the French seam over it. So we want everything to be nice and lined up. So let me run over and do that, and I'll be right back. Okay, so I have ironed a nice crisp seam right here. And all I'm going to do is throw on a couple wonder clips here just to keep my seam nice and straight while I go over and sew this. Make sure your corners are nice and crisp. You want them to be as 90-degree as possible. We're going to do the same thing, except for with a 3/8 inch seam allowance, so that we can make sure that we include the 1/4 inch seam that we did before. So we're going to sew down here, starting with the cuff, back stitching, come to the corner, leave your needle in, pivot, come around to the edge, and back stitch, and then we're done. It might be a little thick right here when you're sewing. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it if it just kind of bumps over a little bit. It's not going to be noticeable at all. So I'm just going to clip my threads real quick. And we're going to flip it around, and you're going to see you cannot see any of your raw edges. You don't need a serger. You don't need to zigzag. You've just done the entire pillowcase. So this is what it looks like. And see, there were no worries about the directional fabric. When you lay this out in the very beginning and you attach your strip to your cuff, just make sure your cuff is in the direction you want it to be, and it's going to look beautifully. So, how cute is that? I'm just going to iron this, and I'll show you the finished product in just 1 second. So the finished product, and you can see that this turned out beautifully. It is not difficult at all to line these up. You just have to make sure that you pin them well in the beginning. So let's stuff this pillowcase and see how generous the size is. There you go. Beautiful pillowcase. So here's some other combinations of fabric, all Christmas themed, that I made for the market. This is the one that I thought turned out so beautifully that I might actually make some for my own bedroom. But we've got the snowmen, and we've got gingerbread houses with gingerbread people, some more traditional poinsettias. Here's some really happy snowflakes, and then some more muted blue snowflakes. Thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. God bless.